Hi, I'm Claire Wingfield. I'm a literary consultant and editor based in the UK, and today I'm going to be talking to book designer Dan Prescott of Cooper Street Type Company about how authors can get the best from working with a book designer. Dan and I have collaborated on a number of manuscripts together, and I'm so excited that he's going to be sharing some of his expertise and working practices with you today. Thanks so much for coming to talk to us about book design today, Dan.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me in.
So when you are working with a publishing company on a book, could you describe the typical process?
So the main point of contact usually in the publishing house is with the art director. So they'll be the person who's subbing out the work. And they'll be briefing me on whether they've got an idea of the visuals that they want, or just basically talking through the brief, and I'll be liaising with them. Sometimes the point of contact can also be the editor who's managing the project. So it actually varies quite a lot between publishers and between areas of the industry. Trade publishers like Penguin, most of my liaison will be with the art department, whereas an educational publisher, most of the liaison will probably be with editorial, because it's perhaps less of a creative process.
So that's really interesting. So when there's an art department, does that mean that in-house they've already come up with a lot of the design?
Yeah, well, I think because it's so sales driven in a lot of ways, they will have gone through quite a long process already about where they've discussed what look and feel they want to go for, what vibe they need the book to have before it's even subbed out. So you'll be at the point where it reaches me, it will be quite a fairly specific brief.
That's fantastic.
Where they've actually got it, they don't know what finished product they want, but they know what they want it to feel like, what they want it to look like, what elements they want. If it's a high profile author, they want a photo of them on the front.
So it's been through quite a research process before they actually contact you as a designer. When you work with a publishing company on a book, do you read the whole manuscript or a section of the manuscript, or are you mainly working to a brief supplied by the publisher?
It's you have quite different scenarios if you're dealing with a publisher or dealing with an independent author. If I'm working with a publisher, I wouldn't be expected, 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't be expected to read your manuscript. I would base everything on the brief that the art director would give me and the conversations that we would have, and I would expect that they would give me all the information I needed to fulfill the brief.
And am I right that the art director and the art department will have done quite a lot of research into how they want the look of the book to be before they work with you?
Yeah, in my experience, it seems to have, before it even kind of falls on my desk, it seems to have gone through quite a long process of discussion and brainstorming about the look and feel of the book, about how they want to present it, about how they, if it's a big name author, whether it's going to need to have a photo on the front, the kind of typography they want to use. So yeah, by the time I'm given the brief, it's gone through that process, even for a couple of months maybe.
And so is the brief quite a lengthy document sometimes, or very brief?
It can be, or it really depends on the type of book. Sometimes it can be lengthy with descriptions of what they want, the kind of look and feel they want, the kind of colour schemes. Sometimes it can just be, we're going in this genre, look at this book in the same genre, and use that as your guide. For a kind of lifestyle book, for example, there'll be give 3 or 4 examples of successful books in the genre, and that just gives you that guidance,
Fantastic. And when you're working with an independent author, what do you use then?
Well, I think we're working with independent authors. I would definitely expect to read a lot more of the content. I probably wouldn't read the whole book. I'd probably read a couple of chapters, read the synopsis. I know you sometimes work with authors on creating cover documents for their submissions for publishers, which give a kind of synopsis and encapsulate the concepts of the book and its target audience and things like that. And that is always a great bit of information for me to have when I'm designing the covers, because it it just gives a concise idea of what they envisage the book to be, who it's targeting, the kind of vibe that they're going for, and that kind of thing. And so you can tie the cover design into that.
Excellent. So it could be, if somebody had previously submitted to an agent or publisher, the material from the cover letter could be perfect to show the designer. And if you have the pitch or the product description that you're planning to use as your sales text, that can be ideal to share with your cover designer too, which means that you get a really good match between the text of your sales description and the image of the book, which is exactly the authenticity that a reader is looking for when they go to buy a book.
Well, that for a designer, that kind of information is invaluable, because it just gives you that snippet of exactly what they want the book to represent. In fact, a project I've been working on recently with an independent author, they actually gave me a scene from the book that they wanted to depict on the cover, because they felt that scene was kind of pivotal to the whole book.
Oh, fantastic. That's another
So
really
that's
good
even
approach.
more specific. But
And when working with a publishing house, what's the etiquette of author, editor and designer interaction? Is all the contact with the publishing house, or do you sometimes work directly with the author?
in my experience, there'd be zero interaction between the designer and the author in that context. Everything would go through the art department or the editorial department. I mean, I don't know if that's the case with everyone, but I've whenever I work with publishers, I've never had any interaction with the authors.
So for you as a designer, it's a very different process for you, sometimes working directly with the author and sometimes working with a publishing company.
Yeah, it's a completely different relationship, really.
I suppose that has its pros and cons in a way, doesn't it? Maybe the author is more passionate about the project, so the communication with you covers a lot of different things, but maybe with a publishing house there is more, I suppose they may have a clearer eye on the research or the sales.
Yeah.
They may have done more of that work before they approach you.
I mean, the benefit of working directly with the author is that you get involved in that process, and that personal relationship and the passion that they have about their own product. But then, like you say, they lack the objectivity that a publisher would have, possibly, and the other considerations that an editor may have to take into account. They've got the sales department telling them they need to do this. They've got marketing telling them they need to do this. So there are pros and cons of both processes, but they are quite different.
I suppose that obviously always keeps your working life interesting, doesn't it, to have that? Brilliant. So if you're an independent author and looking to work with a cover designer, perhaps it's your first book, could you tell us, Dan, what a writer can consider when looking for or hiring a designer, and how they can get the best out of the process?
I think the first thing to do is look at the designer's previous work, really. That gives you an idea of the quality of their work, and whether they've got a specific style that they often use, whether you engage with their style, whether you feel it can match the look you're going for, because essentially it is a visual creative process. So it's all about the result that you get. So you have to make sure that you're confident that they're going to create the result that you need.
What would you find worse for you? A brief that is too open, so if an author expresses no preference, or is a little indecisive, or one where an author has a really clear idea of what they want and has almost planned out the whole project themselves?
Maybe counterintuitively, I actually think it's worse if it's completely open brief. The options available to you are so vast that you need some kind of points of reference or some kind of guidance just to whittle it down to, because inevitably, even if it is an open brief, the author is bound to have some idea in their mind of what they want. It may just be a case that you need to tease that out of them.
Have you got any advice if an author has a book that they need a cover for and they really have no idea what direction they would like to go in?
I think as a designer in that situation, one of the most helpful things is just to get examples of existing books that either they like the look of or they think works well, or that not necessarily they like to emulate, just examples of design that they like, even colour schemes that they like, typefaces that they like.
Yeah.
Just examples of things, and that gives you at least some frame of reference.
I wonder if it would ever work to even take it away from books and look at a film poster or CD covers, or so you could be bringing a different influence in, or maybe using a Pinterest mood board.
Absolutely, yeah. I've worked with authors who have done that in the past, and that's really helpful because it just helps to build up an idea of what's in their brain, basically.
Yeah.
Just gives you a steer on what their tastes are and what they think works and what doesn't work. It's the kind of design process is so broad, but by giving examples, it's not necessarily saying this is what I want. It's just giving some kind of flavour or some feel of what you're trying to produce.
And I wonder if taking the idea from an art department in a large publishing house, if some research, I wonder how useful it is for independent publishers or authors to do some research. I wonder sometimes if you share an idea and get lots of different feedback, that can be tricky. But there may be ways of engaging with your readership to ask their opinion on which elements of a cover works for them.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people talk about split testing, so trying different versions of a cover and changing one or two things, or changing one thing per test to work out what a readership is responding well to, which you can do very well using social media. And so all things to think about.
And I guess that also depends on how, the motivations for the author, whether they're, whether it's a pet project and creativity is the most important thing, or whether they're sales driven and they're looking to sell as many units as possible. There'll be different considerations for different, depending on what the author's wanting to get out of the project.
I mentioned getting feedback on designs. A few of the writers I've worked with have described being a little worried about communicating with their designer if they've not been happy with a design. How do you feel when you're asked to come up with a new idea, or how can we? Yeah, how do you think it's a good idea to get feedback from different people, and do you sometimes feel that can derail the process? Or
for me, the most important thing is to create a product or create a design that the author is absolutely happy with, and that they feel is representing the book in the best possible way. So if the author's not happy, the main thing is to just mention it and talk about it.
So if problems are coming up, the best idea is to talk about it as early as possible.
Yeah.
And even sometimes you can perhaps press pause on a project and it's nice just to say, I'm just having a few days to think about this design. So if you've got any further work that you were going to be doing, you can pause that while I just sit with the design. Because book design once you've had a cover launched, you can stick with it for a long time. So you do want to get it right. but definitely for everybody's sanity to mention things as early as you can.
Yeah. When I'm working with an author, I would usually submit probably 3 designs up front anyway. So you would hope that that gives the openness that's needed up front. I don't think you can be too prescriptive
Yeah.
at that initial stage.
Does genre matter to you, or are you able to design a cover for most books?
I don't think genre does matter really. I think the kind of design, the core design skills are fairly universal. So in theory you can apply them to any genre really.
So you'd be equally able to design for a cookery book or a work of literary fiction.
Yeah. Because it's different decisions that you make, different solutions that you come up with that that make the design work in those different contexts, different typefaces, different colours, different use of graphics. These are all basic skills, but you're using them in different contexts. So.
And do you share your work with the author as you're going through the process, or does it tend to be at the end of the process?
Well, as I mentioned after having the initial discussions with the author and getting some idea of what they're looking for, I would produce 3 different designs, submit them at that stage up front to the author, and get their feedback on 3 designs, and probably at that stage whittle it down to 1, and then we take that one forward. And for me, I go backwards and forwards constantly with the author. I get their feedback on the design, make any changes that they suggested, resubmit it, and go through that process again and again until we've reached a design that we're both happy with. So it's a constant conversation really, rather than a kind of go away, squirrel away for a couple of months and come back and give them a finished design. It's more of a collaboration.